Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth day of discussions for the OpenStack Manila Caracal PTG. Um, this is our last day of open topics, but on Monday we had the retrospective, Tuesday we had all things FFS and the third deletions, and also our operator hour. Yesterday we had human readable export locations, share backups, integration with Barbican, some tech debt, and also our cross project session with Cinder. And today we are going to have like a couple more topics to discuss. It's some new updates, some other things that I would like to highlight. And at the end of this day, we'll have our Zrilla happy hour. So yeah, that's I think we can get started. The recording for all of the other days I just mentioned is already available on YouTube. So if you are interested on what happened in the previous PTG days, please take a look there. And if you have questions or you would like to point out something else, please let us know, and then we can continue discussing that. So yeah, I think first topic here, it's kind of like something assigned to me. So expectations while submitting features. I think the topic name is not only something, it's not the only thing I would like to focus here, but to bring a bit of a perspective, we like for the previous cycles, we kind of had some sort of like issues with communication. I would say I won't say like they were severe issues, but we realized at some point that some things while we were submitting features were kind of becoming some sort of empirical knowledge between people that have been contributing to this a lot, and we didn't have like a lot of information on the feature proposal processes before. So yes, there was some information, but we have never compiled that, and we started thinking about ways to address that. So I was discussing a bit of that with Gotham, and I'm proposing a new documentation here that I believe can be of help. So one thing that I would like to ask of you is please review this, because your feedback is going to be very important. And also, this is a very good documentation for you in case you are planning to submit features to Manila or you'd like to remind some stuff. So the idea here is that we will have some sort of a process or describing the process or what we have as expectations while submitting features to Manila. What are the deadlines? What you should comply? Should I have templates? Should I don't? So that's the base idea behind this whole documentation. And the thing is, like, it's structured in a couple of ways. So you can check that out. I mean, this is still the rendering, but as soon as it's merged, you'll be able to check it out in the contributor and developer guide for Manila. And it's one of the first things. So it's called proposing new features, and then it's divided into like 4 main sections. The first one would be like related to planning the feature. The second one, working on the implementation, what you need to understand and what you need to do. The deadlines, which is a very important part of this as well, because sometimes we, can be a bit lost, or we don't have a way to check if we are already compliant to everything we should be doing during this deadline. And some additional tips that I mean, you can contribute to those as well, and you can also provide feedback. But basically here, like if I go to this documentation, and then I want to go through this thing so that we have like some common understanding of what I'm proposing here, and we can already like I can already address questions, and we can already start talking about it. But basically, like the whole feature proposal stuff, or the whole feature starts with the planning. And with that planning, we would usually start by registering a blueprint. And at the beginning of the cycle, we would already start discussing the feature during the PTG. Yeah, we had some folks doing that for the first time. I hope it was a good experience, because for us, it was great. And for this like part, like discussing the features during the PTG, it's a very important thing because it's a way that we can already kind of account for what we are going to be doing during the cycle, and also like try to have an estimate. Oh, look, this is on our radar. Someone already mentioned that this feature is being implemented. Let's mention, for example, the NetApp specific implementation for share backups. So let's say, oh, I already know that these guys are planning to work on this feature. So I already have like, some this already in our radar, and we can already say like, look, at the end of the cycle, we'll have like, we can try to estimate the amount of reviews and how can we start reviewing the changes and when can we start reviewing the changes, so that we can get everything merged and we can already kind of understand what are going to be the size of the changes, so we don't have any surprises at the end. So discussing at the PTG is a pretty much important thing. And but if you, if we miss PTG and you would like to discuss something else related to a feature, like, oh, you've seen like a major development and something went to a different implementations, you started thinking in other lines, then you could always bring that up in the upstream weekly meeting, add that to the upstream weekly meeting agenda, and we are always there to discuss that. So the upstream weekly meeting agenda is, you can edit it as long as you have like a Launchpad account, which I'm assuming everyone does, because that's basically you need to have that so you can have your account on Launchpad, so you can have bugs assigned to yourself. So I'm assuming everyone does. So if you'd like to discuss something else, you feel like you could benefit from some minutes of attention from everyone, don't hesitate to bring that up in the upstream weekly meeting. We will use, for example, in the discussions of the feature in the PTG, we will use some predefined aspects to define whether your change needs expectation or not, or specification or not. So in this case, you can already check it out here. I'm trying to link as many things as possible from this doc, so you can, when you are planning your new feature, you can come here and you would already kind of anticipate what we will be asking. So if we will be asking a spec or not. So this is basically the criteria we try to use when we are asking for people to write a spec or not. So this is one part of it. So discussing the change of the PTG, and we will decide on the spec or not. We will suggest some things to you. And then writing a specification will be the next step if you already haven't started, if you are coming up with a new feature, or if you need updates to a spec that is already there. So that would be the next part, like proposing an update to an existing spec, or you could pretty much write a new spec in case there is need. But in here, there is like an specification example. This is merged in the Manila specs repository. So you can see what we are expecting, how do we expect to see things, what do you need to mention, like problem description, use cases that your feature is going to solve, some alternatives, like what you'll be changing in the database, what's the API impact, every single aspect of it. And then, here we are pretty much defining what you should be like adding for each one of these topics, what we expect to see in your spec. So all of it is linked here. So if you check it out, you see you get the links here. And also, like now going to the next phase, which would be working on the implementation. Sometimes you already start working the implementation parallelly with the spec, so we can gain some time, especially if there are some points being discussed, but you already know that there's a part that was agreed on. So working on the implementation is basically one of the most important things. So you should follow the OpenStack coding guidelines, which is linked here as well. And also like some contributor docs in case you have already questions about, oh, how should I implement the drivers interface? What is expected from like the shares migration mechanism when I'm implementing it to my driver? I think all of those are already defined in the contributor docs, and a lot of other things as well, like some API stuff, how should your APIs look like and everything. And a quick overview on how you should set up your development environment. So here I mentioned DevStack. there's a chance you would not like to use that, but I mean, DevStack is likely the quickest way to test stuff. So you can pretty much work on your DevStack setup, and then we have some local confs for you. So in case you want to set up DevStack with the LVM driver, ZFS on Linux, FFS, you can use this example local confs. And in case you have you want to use the HSS true and you want to use a first-party driver, you could use the generic driver or the container driver. And then there is the dummy backend driver, which is a very important thing as well. When you are implementing a new feature or new APIs, we always account that this is going to be implemented in the dummy driver. The dummy driver doesn't do anything. When you send a request to it, it will only respond like, oh, that's okay, in case the request is correct. Otherwise, it will deny it and it will raise an error. But we have a lot of those, a lot of that testing happening with the dummy driver. Like the dummy driver covers every single feature we have in Manila. And it's a very good way for us to understand if something is broken while you are introducing a change or not. And it's pretty much like easy to understand and also easy to implement a feature here. So in your change, we are expecting that you test this against the dummy driver, yes. And we are also expecting that you implement the feature in the dummy driver if it's not already there. It's a small driver, as I said, it will always respond like, oh, true or false, or it's okay, or it's not okay, the request you've done. But it's like, gonna help us in case we are modifying stuff in the Manila share, and we would not like to, oh, sorry. And in case we would not like to break something else in the code. So this is like the documentation for setting up some development environment, and then the OpenStack client implementation. So yeah, that's one thing that we would expect you to work on. We do not expect you to work on the Manila client, Manila shell client anymore. Only OpenStack client should be enough. Because we are adding the deprecation warning for that, and it should be deprecated in the E release, possibly because of the Slurp upgrade. If we drop that before the Slurp, we wouldn't have like notice for people that are skipping releases. So yeah. Unit tests, yes, an important part as well. We have the zoo jobs that we always check for the coverage percentage of the changes, and also the reviewers will be looking at it pretty much. So you can run the unit test locally to ensure that it is the tests are passing, and then you can submit that to Garrett. So you avoid like the Garrett running like 15 jobs, 15 VMs, only because and failing only on the unit test just because we didn't run them locally and we didn't spot the issues in the unit test locally. So one advice I would give, like for saving some resources from the community, but also saving you some time to fix those issues, would be run the unit test locally, ensure that they are passing, implement your own unit test, and then you submit the change to Garrett. Same goes to PEP8 or any other thing that we are running that could be quick to run in your machine. Functional tests is also an important part of the implementation. So negative and functional tests must be written for new APIs. And in case your development environment, your development environment might run Tempest as well, but if you don't have installed it, if you haven't installed it yet while you're doing the DevStack installation, you can always install Tempest as a plugin, because Manila Tempest plugin is a plugin of Tempest. So if you install Tempest and you install Manila Tempest plugin, then it should be all right. It should be able to run your tests, and you could again like try to ensure that what the tests you are writing are going to be passing in the CI as well. Another thing would be documenting your work. And there in the specifications, usually you will define what's the impact, but when you are implementing the feature, you can already foresee who's going to be impacted and what kind of documentation I should be updating. In case, for example, I'm changing something related to shares creation. So, it's user guide that must be changed. It's the admin guide as well. But in case it's only something like related to share servers, users, they don't have any like sort of, they might not know that the share server exists because it's kind of like a detail that is supposed to be only for the could be only for the could be only for the admin. Sorry about that. So that's you can already kind of understand what kind of doc changes you need to do. So for and in order to like try to get some more help from other reviewers to review your changes, you can schedule a collaborative review session. That has proven to be very useful for us in the past because it helps to speed up the review process. When we have the authors of the change walking us through all of the key points of their changes, and then we can already discuss them in a call with, and then the reviewers will go ahead and post some comments, and we kind of already know what people were doing when they were trying to write a new feature, and we will kind of try to ask already for something that we feel we are missing or something like that. So there are plenty of examples of collaborative review sessions in the OpenStack Manila YouTube channel. So yeah, I mean, here is like, I think 12 examples. We have a playlist and we usually record those. So if you once propose one, we will record it and it will also be a part of our YouTube channel. So yeah, that's a very important thing. And then these collaborative review sessions, they can be announced or requested in the upstream Manila meeting. We don't need to wait until feature freeze. In fact, it's expected like, oh, it's kind of close to feature proposal freeze, which is usually like 3 weeks before the feature freeze. Then or sometimes before that, it will be a good timing for asking for a collaborative review session so that we can already start doing some reviews to the changes that are being proposed, and we can have like an event-less feature freeze. So yeah, that's kind of like the parts of the implementation. Now, like deadlines, let's look through the deadlines for each one of those things I just mentioned. So Manila spec freeze, all specifications must be merged prior to this date. So, and I didn't propose the dates to the release schedule yet. Sorry, I'll do that. But we have a different date, a different milestone to where we target the specs. So all the specs must be merged before that date. Feature proposal freeze. This means that new features must be submitted to Garrett before this deadline. The core, client, and Tempest changes must be available on Garrett, but it does not mean that they should be merged by this deadline. And new driver deadline is basically by the end of this week, new backend drivers must be substantially complete, and they should have unit tests and be passing third-party CI, but they do not have to actually merge until feature freeze. And for feature freeze, the client release follows a different timeline from the core component. So the client changes must always be merged before the feature freeze date, because the clients will ship during the feature freeze timeline. So if if the client change missed the feature freeze, then it will only make it to the next release we can do of the client. And for the client, the code also must contain the unit and functional tests. And the API, here's an important note, like the API changes must have the documentation updated in the same change as the entire feature change. We've seen that happening before, but if you would like to submit the administrator or contributor or a user guide together, that's fine too. But if you would like to only work on the API first and then you can add the other bits, we would be completely relying on you to add the other bits of documentation. And yeah, all the new features must be merged by the feature freeze date. But in case you need extra time for the Manila core change, please reach out to the PTO or the core reviewers. But also the feature freeze, one other thing, like regarding the other changes, for feature freeze, we do not expect that the Tempest changes are merged as well. we only expect that they are testing the code and that they are passing and showing us that there isn't any bug with those APIs and with those functionalities. The Tempest changes, they can be merged a bit later because Tempest is not branched and we can work on the releases as it goes. So that's an important thing to mention as well. So we don't expect you to have the Tempest merged by the feature freeze as well. And some additional tips here. Please join the upstream meetings because it's very important to have you there. Like, for example, we have sessions for topics for review focus. We have topics and you can also add your own topics there. So if you'd like to bring something up, if you'd like to request some review in a change, that would be good timing as well. And not only because of that, but also because it's nice to be aware of everything that's happening in the project, but also there are usually the bugs being that are being reported and everything. So yeah, let me link this to you again. And making sure that you use the commit message tags in your changes. We recently found out that if you don't submit the closest bug or partial bug tags in the commit message before you submit them to Garrett, then Garrett will struggle to pick it up. To pick up which review is, and then we will end up needing to close the bugs manually sometimes. So yeah, that's just like an additional reminder, not only for the features, but also for bug fix that you could work on. Also trying to submit the changes upstream as early as possible, because I mean, there is one thing that is important here is sometimes we don't submit it. Sometimes there might be people that would not like to submit the changes upstream as early as possible. But one benefit of submitting this upstream would be we have all of the context behind all of those changes, because if I submitted an initial version and then you already start having reviews on the change somewhere else, the other reviewers that will take on the change when they are submitted to the Garrett upstream, they won't have the context of what was discussed so far that made the change be shaped like that. So it's important to submit the changes as early as you can, because that will get everyone's make everyone have the context behind all of the changes. And again, it's also something that you can also account for the reviews on your Stackalytics in the changes. And yeah, that's only some numbers, but you can also have that as a bonus. And remember to run PEP8 unit tests and coverage before you submit your changes to Garrett. And this is kind of like an ask, and please try. I would ensure you. I would ask you to ensure that you are trying to keep a review discipline, and you are trying to review other people's changes along the way as well, because that, as we have been saying, I think we said that this in the retro as well. This is something that really helps us to merge the changes faster. So if we have more people reviewing the changes, this means that we can get the changes in a good shape faster, and we can get feedback from the people we want, and then the changes can be merged. So yeah, I think I'm done talking. I've been talking nonstop for almost 30 minutes. So do you guys have any questions? Would you like to see something else being mentioned here? Yeah, and the change is up for review. It's mentioned in the in this Etherpad as well. So please provide your feedback to this change. Ask any questions. You can ask questions now. You can ask questions on the reviews. Both work. But yeah, I'll shut up now. Do you have questions?
Hey, no questions, but comments for sure. This is actually well thought about and very well detailed. So thank you so much for writing it down, because I suppose we just talk about it at regular intervals, and you've actually mentioned this at weekly meetings a lot, right? And you remind people about how things are done around to get things working smoothly. And we've also evolved this process over a period of time. So it's kind of nice to actually put it in the docs, so that if somebody's new to the community, they can look in one place. And it also serves as a meta doc, because I really like the way you're linking out to existing documentation. Probably a chance to keep improving those as well. Well, I mean, one thing for sure, right? If people that are new are joining, and reading these documents, they are going to see far more things, in a different sense than folks that have been around. Because for one, I don't read the documentation website a lot, right? Unless somebody's asking me a question and I want to link them to it, and then probably if I start catching issues. But I do that far less than somebody that is new to the project. So if you're reading these docs and you find all these inconsistencies or things that are plainly wrong, please do either alert us or just submit a fix, right? And this sort of meta doc to tie everything together is probably a really nice place to start exploring the docs. Um, just a few comments, I think, on the spec otherwise, and most of them are like pretty minor. I did um, want to stress on the Tempest test aspect. I think we've been a little confused about that in the past, and I think we if we want to stress that part in the spec, I'm all in support for it. And and my take on that is, when you're submitting a new feature, it's great. You've tested it with unit tests. You've probably written some other kinds of tests within the Manila repository, but that's not going to be enough to convince even the reviewers that this stuff actually works well, and which is where the integration with the dummy driver comes. Because the whole point over there is so we can try to see how it interacts with a backend driver, if your feature involves something that goes all the way to the backend driver and needs some work to be done by the backend driver. And we put the backend dummy driver to test using Tempest. So if you're writing some Tempest tests, we're going to be determining the behavior of the backend driver through the API via Tempest, and that's the whole point. And the other good advantage of having the dummy driver is so that you can get some functional testing of the scheduler done, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do, because we don't really have. I mean, we write unit tests, of course, for every bit of code, but testing the scheduler functionally is in the CI pretty rare, and pretty this thing to catch some issues that happen at scale and stuff. So you got to be a little clever, and part of that is to implement the dummy driver in a good way, raise the kind of errors that you're expecting from a backend driver, kind of predict it and determine it, and make that part of your implementation. So I definitely want to stress on that part in this talk. Um, yeah, and what else? I think you've pretty much covered the rest of the community aspects, like the collab reviews and things like that. So thanks for putting all of those into like a concrete form like this.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carlos, for taking time to explain all these things, and it's very important. And so we know a few basics, but yeah, now we have seen a lot of options here, and I will spend time to go through that thoroughly, and we'll try to follow. Yeah, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thanks. Feedbacks, welcome. Yep. So please take a look.
One
if you
question, Carlos, regarding dummy driver for checking the scheduler and all. About in the Tempest, right? Is there a way we can check DHS as true and false
yeah.
without actual implementation?
Yeah, the dummy driver, it has the implementations for both DHS as true and false. So that's why it's so good to test with it, because I mean it's a driver that can do basically everything. It won't it won't take any time, like almost any time to run tests, because I mean it's basically saying yes or no or responding something like that. Mostly like the migration test would take a bit more time, because we actually add like some say a 60 seconds wait, because we want to get each want shares to get to like switching phases, like phase 1, phase 2. So yeah, that's but dummy driver is pretty much a complete driver, and you can pretty much do whatever you want with it, and it's gonna be light. You'll be able to test with it pretty easily and quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to implement features there.
Thank you, Carlos. But in your presentation, while covering DHS as true and false, right, you mentioned about container driver. So how container driver is different from dummy driver?
Yeah, the container driver, it will actually do stuff with containers. So when you are doing JSS as true, for example, it will create a container, and then the container will be the share server for that share. And then the shares are going to be created, and it's actual space allocated, and you could actually go ahead and write data to that share. When for this dummy driver, it's a different scenario. So for the dummy driver, we don't create anything for the share server. So we don't have like we only have the data database entity, and then the shares
okay.
will also be like fake shares. So if you try to mount that share, you will never be able to write data on that, because it's only a representation, like, it's only an object from the database, and we aren't actually allocating space anywhere. Whereas for the container driver, you could use the container driver as you use, for example, the NetApp driver, because I mean, it's going to have the JSS as true. You could mount the share, you could write data into the share. So, and it's a first-party driver. It doesn't require you to have a vendor. It will install like Docker. It will do a couple of setups, and then you would have a fully functional GHSS true backend. So that's basically the main difference between those.
Okay, Carlos. Thank you so much. Now it is clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For 90% of the cases, the dummy driver alone will not be enough, right? Like as mentioning, the dummy driver will help you test the scheduler, test the driver interactions. But if you really want to define what the driver behavior needs to be, you should be implementing it in the reference drivers, right? That's what the expectation is. The reference drivers being these, but sometimes, and quite rarely, you might have to expose something that can only be done by vendor storage, or one of these other drivers. So at that point, then you have a limited choice. I think we've had examples of those in the past, like updating security services or something. I don't remember.
So whoever is implementing driver core component changes, they're responsible for the container driver also, along with the dummy driver, or
yes, in the sense of and it's not just the container driver. We have a few reference drivers upstream, and these reference drivers are the generic driver, LVM, container, ZFS on Linux. And at least these four. So you could pick any of these, and whatever is appropriate for the feature, as the reference driver, if you'd like. And if the feature is small enough, I mean, we've done stuff where we've gone ahead and implemented it in all of these drivers, when we are updating them and stuff. These four are kind of our test drivers upstream, because we are able to easily run CI with them, and we maintain them as a community.
okay. So in the review, we'll expect at least one driver implementation along with the course changes.
Yeah. If you'd like to split them up, that works too. You could actually have a core change and then the driver change. But if you're let's say you have a feature where you are also planning a third-party driver change, such as an NetApp driver change, we would definitely expect that to be split up from the core change. Unless absolutely necessary, right? Like you're changing something fundamentally and it breaks all the drivers, and you're updating all the entry drivers at once or something like that. But if you're implementing that new feature, you'd actually benefit by splitting up the core change and the NetApp driver change. But I'll also extend that to saying, split up the patch as you think is appropriate. It actually takes some time to understand, perhaps, functionally trying to split it up so that reviewers can have it, can go through those patches easily. That's the idea. Because you can land a massive patch of 10,000 lines. We've done that in the past, except, that's also one of the things where you will find reviewers, shying away from something like that. And you're going to have a very difficult time getting that feature merged. And so the recommendation has always been, if you're trying to do a massive change, at least try to functionally split it up. And one good way is, of course, code changes versus driver changes and things like that.
Okay. So core changes will be mixed with one of the dummy drivers, and
Yes.
actual implementation will be separate. That
Yeah.
is the proposal. Okay. Nice, Ravi. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some examples for that. For example, with the share server migration, I think that happened a while ago when the main mechanism was implemented. And I mean, this behavior also happened basically with most of the features to this date. So in this case, like for the share server migration, we had the migration added like to the Manila core, and then one bit implemented to the container driver, and then there was like the NetApp support added for it as well. So it's basically this set of changes that pretty much like completed the share server migration stuff. So I think I can try to link all of those changes to get them as an example. But yeah, that's pretty much how we have been working on this. And like for the past releases, we didn't enforce this a lot, but this is really important. And at the end, I think we ended up like having to fix some issues with some drivers after some changes got merged, because I mean, yeah, the changes could be like breaking other drivers. If I recall correctly, that happened once. So that's something that we would like to continue to do, that we have been doing in the past, but we didn't do for like 1 or 2 releases. Okay, any other
Carlos,
questions?
I have a quick question. Sorry, before we wrap up. Thanks. This is very, very helpful. So does it? So I know we spelled out the tests, functional unit tests. Would it help to have a definition of what the acceptance is, like the acceptance criteria in this context to the document as well, so folks know what to expect?
Yeah, that would be nice. I think I could add that to the doc. So we could add like, define some criteria for the coverage, or at least or for the functional tests as well. And yeah, for the core maybe. But I mean, I think that varies a lot from the features, but I think, yes, it would be useful as well, so that we have like, some definition of what we would be actually expecting when we are about to merge a feature or something like that.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe like a small checklist of what is the definition of done, based on this, like even a summary of this very thing at the very bottom might act like one, like a guideline even to reviewers. Sorry.
Thanks for clarifying that, Gautam. Yeah, so I think, when the reviewers will kind of automatically do this, but it would, help to have some written guidelines they can go by, like as a checklist.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll work on that and update the this doc. But again, like, please read through it and provide feedback, ask questions if you like me to clarify something, or if you feel we are missing something there. Okay, I think. Yeah, so I think that's it I had for this topic. Sorry, it took like 15 minutes more than I was expecting. But yeah, I think we are good now. Thank you everyone for the feedback and for the ideas and for questions as well. Next topic is howcasts. So yeah, I think Gotham, would you like to start on this?
Yes, and feel free to interrupt me because it's something we were planning together, so you have all of the context as well. So what is this? Well, it's just a thing that we've been brainstorming amongst ourselves because we occasionally have interns and we also have a lot of new contributors cycle to cycle. And we find ourselves, that we end up having to write some new docs or keep polishing the existing docs and stuff like that. But it's not been as effective as sometimes just getting on a call and go through something with somebody new, right? And so with that, we were thinking we should probably record these things, and we do post a lot of the intern onboarding content on our YouTube channel. Almost every call is recorded if we think it's going to be useful for the future, kind of thing. But then we thought, why not? Why don't we just maintain a video library of things that we keep often repeating, or something that we would like for folks to know, right off the bat when they're adding something new, like proposing a new feature and so on, or even how to work with stuff in Manila and things. So that's where this idea comes from. And the gist of it is that we wanted this to be completely consumable. So technically, a tiny amount of content delivered over um, you know a screen share or a video with a voiceover that we would record, and we would explain whatever it is that we want to talk about. We have some ideas about what we would like to talk about, and I have to pull up a Etherpad for that, and I'll
Yeah,
just
just
drop it
link it
in.
in the. Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So if you open that, Carlos, on the screen share as well, we can just go through some of those. So starting from the very get-go as to what most of you would have already done, but it's going to be really helpful for somebody that is starting new, right? How do you set up a dev stack? What do you do with how do you set up a dev stack with a dummy driver? And how do you go through, like, the OpenStack services, like troubleshooting them, reading logs, restarting services, changing configuration files, and and generally operating with things on an OpenStack cloud, which is in this case being a dev stack. And then how do you run tests locally? What kind of testing is expected? What are the different things that are possible? Because we find ourselves trying to tell people, at least run the unit and the linting tests, but there are 20 something other things that the CI is doing, right? And many of those things can be done locally too. And so we could actually have a compendium of how do you run all of these stuff and how do you even contribute new tests to this sort of thing? And of course, how do you, as a person that is brand new, even contribute to OpenStack? You've created 20 something accounts. Okay, it's not 20, but it's a handful of accounts. And there are different things. We have task trackers, we have the review system, we have the CI system, and so on. How do you view all of these things and interact with those? And yeah, documentation, writing unit tests. We've kind of done this like as a pair programming thing, I guess, a while ago. But maybe it would be nice to go through like what the code structure is within Manila or within Python Manila client or within Manila UI as to where your tests go when you're trying to write something. Because often we've seen that that's been a little confusing because we actually, I mean, we would like to have some strict definitions of what is what, but the reality is otherwise. For tests, for instance, and it's a very interesting topic. Like, there are some purist views on what a test should be, but eventually, what is in the code is something completely different, and it probably takes some time to grok that. So we could go through something like that. We could we could talk about OSC. How do you write a command? How do you integrate basically in an API change that you're making with the CLI? And some things that some of us do with annoying things like you're expecting a behavior, but it's not working. And so you would have to crack out your Python toolbook and start using debugging with PDB and so on. I mean, debugging with logs and print statements is absolutely fine, but in many cases that may not just work. So PDB or even the Oslo profiler, and trying to understand how your code flows through the repository and the stack. That'd be interesting. How do you write a Tempest test? How do you work with Manila UI? How do you set up an environment to work with Manila UI? A big problem even to document it. And how do you configure a Zool job? A bunch of us have done this, and each time when you're doing this for the first time, you realize it's a pain, and then you start loving it at the end of it. But it takes a while before you do that. You get to that stage, and most people don't really understand it at the beginning. Anyway, so this is just the two of us brainstorming all the possible things that we have explained over a period of time. And then we're like, okay, we're not alone because I mean, this team, this community has always been doing this of, helping each other, learning new things, and just teaching other people, just writing docs and being welcoming in that sense completely. And so that's why we decided to bring it up here and say, we don't want to just do this and start pushing videos to the YouTube channel. We actually want us to do this together with everyone in the community if you're interested. And the idea is you could help us put these things together. And and what does this mean? This means that if we are trying to break this down into these kind of topics, we would not spend more than like 10 minutes on a video on these topics. It will be really short, brief videos, maybe with the pertinent information and then links off to somewhere else or maybe to a different video, a kind of thing. But the idea being we'd create a library of these, and we'd use them, just like we do with docs. Why is this so different from docs? Well, we've noticed that people cannot actually work through docs as easily as we want, but we can be absolutely verbose in docs. But it tends to stick better with people as they're seeing visual content. And one of the biggest this things of this was even just the collab reviews. The moment we turn it into a synchronous call with a video and we're talking to somebody through a change, and they're taking us through the change, we realize it sticks a lot better. It's just human, I guess. So that's why these things, and of course we're not doing this as a replacement to docs. Like I said, we want this to be absolutely brief, and in consumable units. And so we will often in each of these videos probably point back to a doc that has way more information than this, right? And one of the fears about writing docs is you write something or you say something in your documentation, and it is obsolete by the time it merges, right? It's a popular thing, which happens to all software projects. So the deal with this is, if we actually break this content down into whatever number of small bits, if something goes out of date, we're just able to just go delete that thing and refresh just that little content that we're looking to target. Um, that's kind of the idea as to why we are trying to break this down and not really have these massive I don't know Udemy course style things for how do you do things in Manila, right? And stuff like that. I don't know. Just yeah, that's the brief on what this effort is. And as far as timeline goes, we wanted to do this yesterday. No, but to be serious, I think I mean I mean just this whole week I've been vetting outreach interns, and they've been pouring into IRC channels and chatting with Carlos and with everybody else, right, asking questions. So we were like, oh well, we should have had these things ready so we could just hand them out. But better late than never. We're hoping to get through most of these soon. That's the idea. They don't really have a deterministic timeline. But how does this sound? And are there suggestions? I can already see suggestions being added to the Etherpad. So thank you. And but if you'd like to voice out any things in support, in opposition, or in hey, I like this, but we can do this differently, please let us know.
Awesome idea. I think we've been tossing this idea around for a while. Gotham, Carlos, thank you so much for putting this together. It's going to not only help new contributors, but also help out mentors moving forward by, so as you said, it's amazing idea. Great. Thanks. Really thanks for starting this officially. I did add a couple of lines there, 70 and 72. I know it's might be trivial, but just added them for ideas if it's something you guys think that might be helpful to document.
No, totally. I think that the one on 70, for instance, amazing. Like, we take that for granted a little bit as we keep going. But yeah, we've done that even in the collab reviews, and realized that sometimes we don't get reviews from people is because there's a lot of anticipation or sorry, anxiety when it comes to code reviews. And yes, we can clarify what it is that folks do with code reviews and things like this. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Gautam and Carlos, for putting this. And this PDB debugging, it's all about so in PyCharm and services running, like we'll have that live stack trace, in-memory stack trace. It's about that, like what we have in Java, right? Like Eclipse and
yeah, pretty
and
much you can
IDF,
add a
we can the
debugger,
same. Okay,
a
yeah.
breakpoint,
Okay, cool,
and
cool.
like
Yeah.
step through your code and all that.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's what even we asked at the beginning, actually. Okay, thank you. That is really exciting, actually, that one. And you want to add somewhere the rally thing, the performance, right? And recently, like we worked on one bug, like we need to. There are pages for rally, like how to run, how to set it up, and but yeah, maybe we can add that. Maybe we have some notes like captured, and maybe we can add somewhere there so that the people can make use of that. Yeah, rather than going through the entire page, right? Maybe following that 4 or 5 steps, right? You can quickly set up rally in your environment. Okay, that's one thing.
Yeah,
I just wanted to share.
agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks. That's a good suggestion. It is like the Tempest test stuff. Like I said, like 20 different kinds of tests, but some of them you just give it up and say, see, I will run this anyway. But it'll be nice to show how that's done.
Another thing that we, we as contributors do all the time is we know the workflow to propose a patch and how to submit it, how to test it, how to submit it, how to include reviewers, that whole workflow. We all know it, but to a new contributor, it might be helpful to just have a quick demo to
Right.
what are the, so these steps are actually documented here and it's going to be turned into videos, but how do I pull it together to get a, patch submitted and from start to end? That
Yeah.
might be helpful to new contributors, truly new contributors.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is, I mean, I'm pretty much excited for this, honestly. Especially because, I mean, we have been cooking one idea like this like forever, but we never actually got to do this. And I think this is going to be like really, really helpful for us. Because, I mean, it's basically a place. It could sound like a metadoc as the other one, like for the review, like the feature workflow, because I mean, it's easier for you to get lost when you have a lot of documentation and you don't know actually what would be the next thing that would be better for you to understand. So that's one of the reasons behind this as well, because I mean, this way we can structure like parts that would be important here, or what would be the next thing that we would need to be taking a look at. You of course can like look at, if you already know some things, you can, pretty much skip things. But the idea is that this can work in a way that our docs don't. So that's pretty much why I'm very excited about this. Yes, let's continue writing docs, let's continue doing those things, but also this is a good opportunity for us to make it easier for someone joining this team.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
No, go
You were
ahead.
One
saying something.
final word.
Yes.
So just so I understand this correctly, so these are going to be kind of micro videos, how to do things, so people can watch different parts on demand as they need it. Yeah, it's not going to be like one long.
Oh no. Yeah.
So,
No. Exactly. So breaking it down into those topic paragraphs that you see, and the hope is that we'll contain ourselves within 10 minutes for each video. So if it is becoming too much, we might end up like breaking it up into further parts. If something is not explainable in 10 minutes. So we're giving ourselves that time limit because I mean, honestly, I think it's also about the amount of attention you can spend on these videos.
thanks, Gaston. That sounds amazing.
So we'll start compiling them into a playlist, and we'll try to have like some journey chart, pretty much like an index of what these things are, so that it becomes easier to navigate. Because we might end up with like 25 videos of this or something like that. It's a lot of content, but it might just keep growing over time.
Yeah. Okay, any other thought you'd like to share? Going once. Okay, I think we can take a break now. I think we are running a bit late with the schedule. So how does a 5-minute break sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, so see you in 5 minutes then. Okay, so we are back from our break, and next topic we would like to discuss is the SQL Alchemy 2.0 changes, and we are joined by Stephen here that has been driving the changes for the Manila project, and yeah, we'll get an update and get a taste of what is left to complete this work and how we can support him to do that. So, Stephen?
Yeah, you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so I wrote that blurb last night, which I think hopefully describes the current state of this in a lot of detail. The TLDR of it is there's 2 steps that we need to do to complete this work. The first is the one that I've been working on for probably about a year at this point, which is the migration to the decorator-based engine facade style of managing sessions, and that in Oslo, like that Oslo DB provides. As I've noted there, this has been tricky enough to do because of the amount of interaction that exists between different APIs or different methods in the database API module. We're not able to call one decorated method from another decorated method, which means you have to create all these inner wrapper functions, and you have to be very careful with regards to how you handle exceptions. And infuriatingly, whenever I miss stuff, it doesn't tend to get caught by the unit tests. It only tends to get caught by the Tempest tests, and not if you run the Tempest tests individually, only if you run them in parallel. So there's obviously some stuff getting left over that even Tempest isn't able to identify. My solution to this has been to gradually try and whittle down the changes to the minimal amount of work needed to try and keep them as simple as possible. The downside of that is A, it takes time because I need to wait nearly 3 hours or so for a test result, a CI result to come back. And B, it ends up generating a lot of patches. The patches are very small in theory and easy to review, but there is a lot of them and they all have to be reviewed because everything has to merge for it to be of any use. So I'm not sure how else to actually improve upon this. I've been chatting to Mike Bayer, like Zeke, about this, and I think what I'm doing is probably correct. But it does have to be wrapped up before we can move on to the second part, which is the thing that's been done for most other projects where we enable the SQL Alchemy 2.0 warnings. So effectively, SQL Alchemy 1.4 added a whole load of warnings, encouraging you to migrate to like new patterns. And if you turn on these warnings, then you can filter for them and use the warnings library to make them errors, and then filter out all the things that are causing errors, and then iteratively fix them one by one. That should be less than a week's work for anyone, because we have a lot of existing work that we can go on here. We've solved pretty much every one of the potential warnings, I'd say, at this point, and I'd be very surprised if Manila has some things that we're going to have to go and like read the docs for. So we should be able to just effectively copy and paste patterns from existing reviews. We just can't get to that though until all of this this migration to the engine facade stuff is completed. So that's the thing that has to be wrapped up. So I gave a link to that second last bullet point there. I gave a link to the, we'll say, bottom of the series at the moment. This is where I've been focusing my effort, trying to break this thing down as much as possible. This is proving tricky because share instances and share replicas are effectively the same thing. And to create a share, you have to create a share instance. And if you create a share instance, it can occasionally create a share as well. So there's a lot of, I won't say recursive logic, but there's a lot of stuff calling each other, and the other thing calls the first thing and stuff like that. So it's I've noted that it's trivial to migrate. It turns out it wasn't trivial to migrate. I should probably get rid of that message. But I'd like to get this thing to a point where it's passing CI. If we do, then it should be a case of mostly rebasing the stuff on top of it. But I can't say for sure at this point. Yeah, that's pretty much where this is. and where it's kind of stuck. If anyone is interested in grabbing any of this work or turning their hand, like they can either respin the patches or propose their own patches, by all means feel free. Like OpenStack, I might spend more of my time now on OpenShift than OpenStack. So this has been Friday afternoons for me for the last couple of months, and it'll probably be that kind of going forward. So getting all of this wrapped up in a sufficient amount of time is going to be difficult. I just don't know if there's anyone else that has any know-how around this stuff.
Yeah, that's gonna be the hard thing to come by, but I still can't believe how you can do this on a Friday afternoon and still push all of these kind of patches. So thank you, firstly, because we were kind of in the dark about this, or rather, ignorant, even if we were reading the mail threads on how how this is eventually coming, and we're having all of these major issues with this tech debt. So thanks for proposing these patches and having the patience to go through all of these. I had a suggestion on the testing stuff that you had with saying it's going to take a while to come back because it's all running on the CI. The things that I see failing more often on these patches, where you catch a bug and the bug shows up, is in these dummy driver jobs. So we have a couple of those, and that's just the two driver modes that we support in Manila. At the top. So there's the no DHSS and then the DHSS, right? So we don't need to worry about what that really means. It just means no shared networks, no networking versus no driven networking versus this thing. But if they're failing, it's pretty much this thing that they're testing all of the features, and so you've probably run into a bug. That's and those are pretty quick to run through CI, pretty quick as in relatively, about 35 minutes ish. So I was wondering if we could just submit a patch on Manila Tempest plugin, and that just runs these jobs, and then you can do a depends on that thing and just keep running that job, so you get quicker feedback at least, and you're not waiting on these long running jobs.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea, because I did attempt to set up the CI environment myself in like a local DevStack machine. So put together a local.conf by just like passing all of the Zool jobs. But I obviously missed something, because if like it was failing off like master, basically
Oh, I see.
ignoring all of my changes. So I wasn't able to reproduce the thing exactly. If I was able to get it, yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Get a point where the job, we're only running that fast job, because as you say, it should catch things. The only thing is, unfortunately, the thing is catching is probably where there's leftover resources. So it's kind of catching stuff by accident. It's not that a test fails, is that a test I think is leaving stuff after it, behind after itself.
Yes,
And
yes.
that causes
And
subsequent tests to fail.
yes, I've seen that you ran into that, and that has been a historic problem with the way we do the cleanups on Tempest. So I hope you saw the pattern there, but it has been a bug that we have not fixed so far. The pattern there being, if you fail a test, we leave the share behind, and then every other thread tries to clean up the same share and the same share type and so on. And they don't have access to it, period, because the tests are isolated into their own tenants, or at least the threads are isolated into their own tenants, and these things belong to other tenants. So they'll just come up with a 404 or something like that, or even a 400, because they're trying to do something illegal or whatever. So that's that. Yeah, those at the moment you can ignore them, but we have a bug on that we need to go fix in the Tempest side. But yes, I can imagine that's distracting.
Yeah, so I figure, like I said, if anyone is interested in any of this work, I'm more than happy to chat, like to talk through what I've been doing if the patches aren't clear. Otherwise, it'll get done. It's just a question of how quickly it'll get done, because I think the C cycle, so this cycle we're planning on removing that upper constraint cap. And as soon as that happens, well, to be honest, they won't be able to remove the upper constraint cap because Manila is one of the projects that's actually running in the gate in the requirements job. But for that to happen, Manila, the Cinder and Manila, I think, are the two outstanding kind of core projects. A is another one, but the patches are up ready for that. So, yeah, this has to happen at some point in the next 4 months, ideally before Christmas. Yeah.
Okay,
which is optimistic.
like tomorrow.
Yeah.
That is like tomorrow. I did want to ask though. So the number of open patches has come down a lot, right? We've ended up merging quite a lot of them. So is there like, I mean, I can click through one of those and see the relationship chain, but there are some that are not related.
Yes. So most of those are aborted attempts at like different ways of trying to unpick this ball of string that we have. There are ones that are in that. Actually, I've abandoned a lot of them. So effectively, all of those I think are valid. They're just the stacking is still up for debate. And the reason that it's up for debate is because, like I said, it's a giant ball of string, and I'm trying to like figure out what the easiest way to unpick that ball of string is. The only thing that isn't in that stack is obviously the last patch, which is an example of, we'll say, another kind of fix, like one of the other many fixes that we're going to have to address once we get the engine facade stuff all fully migrated over. But the bottom of the series should be that one that I linked in the Etherpad. The top of this part of this, the very top of the series should be that add job to test with SQL Alchemy Master, which in theory, if we end up taking too long, we're not going to need that because we'll just cap in upper constraints. Outside of that, I can't really say without kind of resuscitating my own memory.
Yeah. And if we do enable that job as a non-voting job, is it going to be helpful during review or even to write this stuff? No.
Nah, waste of resources, to be honest. At the moment, it'll be useful that last patch down there, once we start writing those kind of patches, then it'll be useful because we'll be able to watch as the thing eventually goes from continually red to a green state and then move it to voting. To be honest, though, it would be easier to just stack the patch to the top of the series as voting. And then that way, by the time you get to the top of the series, that things are passing as expected. That's what I would be planning on doing. And I think at the moment, that job is at the top of the series.
Okay.
Yeah, it's effectively a canary for this thing now works.
Yes.
So in terms of where we're starting, like I said, it's the share instance, share replica patch. That's the base, and then everything is built up on top of that.
So I, for one, can take a look at this.
That's not. Sorry,
go ahead.
No, go on.
Yeah, no, I for one can take a look at this and see if the issue you're hitting, or do you already know that?
I think I know. I think it's to do with the deletion, but I'm not certain. So, if you click through to the second file there, the SQL Alchemy API.py file, effectively, this is just to give you an example of what we're doing. You'll see that there's I've taken that share instance create method, and it actually had a private implementation already, but I'm removing the use of get session and session.begin, and instead using a context manager decorated over the function. But because we attempt to create share instances from other methods, I think maybe the share replica create method probably calls that, you can't call a decorated function from another decorated function. So you need to have an undecorated inner method. And that's effectively what we're creating here. The rest of it is mostly doing the exact same stuff. I'm removing manual session creation and manual session transaction management, because the decorator will start a transaction when you enter the method and it'll commit or roll back to the transaction when you exit. But I'm missing something in here. I just don't know what. Something isn't saving, something is getting rolled back when it should actually be committed. I'm not sure what, and I've been trying to figure out an easy way of debugging this, and I haven't got anything yet.
Okay.
So, like I said, my next plan is to like untie it even more and literally modify a method to see if I can get that passing CI, and then another method and another method, and maybe squash the wall into a single patch. Then once I figure out where my mistake is. It's not fun work, but it's necessary work, unfortunately. Not fun at all.
Certainly. And this is one of the bigger tech debt things that I've seen, like blow up into these many patches, and this is huge an effort. So I can imagine. A couple of things that I can do is look at it this afternoon, and also help you with the dummy driver change that I was talking about with the test stuff.
That'd be great.
So you don't have to worry about the CI on the main patches. We could just do the depends on, and you can keep modifying it until the series is done, as you're working through the stuff. And in terms of if anyone else can take on this stuff, I think at this point we would need a hell of a lot of hand holding, and I'm not sure that's worth your time. But one thing for sure, as I think Carlos and I have both been reviewing it and learning this as you're doing them, so it's certainly been helpful. So if you're running into things like, okay, I can't take this on anymore, then we should definitely step in and do this with you, kind of thing. But as of now, I would like to keep that +2 stuff so that we can keep merging your patches and unblocking you.
That makes sense. Yeah, and sorry, I missed the piece as well. The reason that this is all needed is because SQL Alchemy 2 has removed auto beginning of transactions. So previously, it would attempt to guess when a transaction needed to be begun. And in Oslo DB, we have auto commit. Auto begin still happens, but auto commit. And as a result of that, you have to manually commit any time that you want to. You want to do anything like that. So what ends up happening is if you turn off auto commit, it doesn't work effectively because we have an implicit reliance on there. So this is why I've tried manual session management, like I've noted there in other projects, and I've never managed to get it to work. There's just too many potential places where you can forget to start a transaction or forget to commit the transaction. And it's just easier to let the decorator do it normally. We just happen to have like 2,500 lines worth of database API code here to migrate, so it's a little bigger than most projects.
Right.
But yeah, background context.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Certainly. So do those sound as good next steps? So when you come back, whenever you're looking at this, we can pick it up again on the code review side.
Yeah. I think it'd be great if you were able to recommend some way to lessen that turnaround time for the patches, so I can basically get faster results from CI or get a result locally. That'd be great, because that's my biggest blocker at the moment. It's just the sheer amount of time it takes to figure out to try and determine whether I fixed something or not.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sweet. Yeah, that's all I had on this. And with regards to the first question about whether we can squash all the changes and backport it, I see no reason that you couldn't squash it. It'll just be a very, very large change. B, it won't actually do anything because SQL Alchemy 2 is capped by upper constraints on those older branches. and see, as a result of those two things, it's going to be some bit of effort, obviously, to squash it and avoid merge conflicts and that. But
no, that was the
theoretically, it's
confirmation that
possible.
I was like seeking, like, you know, the part I was asking for is these OpenStack releases are going to be long living, and so is SQL Alchemy 1.4 the stream going to go away? Is that going to sunset before we stop supporting the OpenStack releases? Was the concern, basically.
Yeah, so Zeke says that they're going to stop supporting 1.4 at probably early next year. So they're working on the release of 2.1 at the moment. And once 2.1 is out, they'll no longer be doing any support work on 1.4. Now, that will affect people that are installing stuff from pip or from PyPy. It won't affect, presumably, people that are using distros,
RPMs
because
and stuff,
they'll have their own backport security policy. So I don't think it'll matter there. And Manila is one of the few, but it's not one of the only projects that still has. So like Placement only yesterday merged the last two patches for SQL Alchemy 2.0 support. Cinder still has, they promised me they'll review them, but they still have a few open patches. And like I said, and there's something else out there as well. Mesakari, I don't even know if that's maintained anymore, but Mesakari still has a load of open patches also.
Okay. Awesome, thanks. It's a good clarification for me. And mainly the concern was, you know, when I mean, the distro stuff. Should distros be concerned, especially when they're doing these long supported releases and stuff? Thanks.
No worries. Cool. Any other questions? If not, I might let you folks go and carry on with the rest of your tech debt cleanup. Fun.
Yeah.
That's a theme.
Yeah. First, thank you very much for picking this up and working on these changes. I mean, it's an impressive amount of changes that you have been working on, and impressive amount of work. And as Gautam said, like impressed. You mentioned like, oh, this is being like Friday afternoons for me. So wow. Thanks a lot for working on that, and for joining us and sharing an update today. So yeah, glad to have you working with us on this, and thanks for all of the work you do. If you need any assistance, please ping us, and then we can help you.
Will do. Okay. In that case, I might drop. Thank you both. Catch you later.
Thank you very much for joining. See you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks Gautam for discussion as well. Next topic is tech debt roundup, round 2.
Round 3, round 4, round 5. No, yeah, thank you. So I think we've made up quite some time. So let me try to be a little brief and quick about this, because most of you are east of me, and or rather all of you are east of me. So what is this about? Well, a continuation of the multi-release stuff that we were discussing yesterday, and these are in a better state, but they're not done yet. And so just wanted to you know, just shed some light on what's left in these different things, and kind of ask around what we want to plan, what we want to do with them, right? And we have Ashley here, and she's been you know, working on three out of the 4 of these. So Ashley, do you want to you know, run through these and, you know, give us the updates that you've actually added out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So first up, regarding metadata for share resources. So far, we have shares, snapshots, and network subnets have been fully implemented. We have some work in progress patches for export locations, and also access rules, though that's a much older work in progress, which I may have to rework anyways. So that's kind of the current status for those patches. I guess when it comes to the spec in general, I wanted some opinions on what's next, I guess. I don't think every user-facing resource need metadata. It's not there's not much call for it anyways that I can see. And I mean, that was part of the original spec, and so yeah, as on the screen, there's a laundry list of items that could theoretically have metadata. I mean, it's no hassle to do them, I suppose, but it's also not a priority. So I don't know, what thoughts do you guys have on the, I guess, prioritized use cases or resources? I mean, export locations for sure. We've heard of that a bit earlier in the PTG, that there's some use cases for metadata that can be used.
Yeah. I think in terms of priority, we are, I mean, kind of going to the right direction. Yeah, so export locations would indeed be the next thing, because it can help a bunch of different scenarios. So yeah, and we already kind of have that as a work in progress already. I could help with the implementation if you'd like. So we can likely target this for this release, and then we can pick up the work where it was left and finish it by the end of this cycle. I think it's going to be like a good addition. So yeah, in terms of priorities, I think it's all good. And we had like the share network subnets being implemented as well. And it was used for like another kind of more specific use case. But again, like it's a good feature to be implemented too. And now like people can use that for these specific use case that Philip implemented, but also for other metadata related stuff that they might want to set. So yeah, that's great.
And one of the other realizations is it takes quite a while for us to get through one of these to actually, I mean, the code may not be too much at this point because you've abstracted away a lot of those things and it's reusable. But the full series, right? You add support in the core, the client, the Tempest tests, and so on. So I think doing that slowly has made us realize that we're now catering to proper use cases rather than trying to make that generic metadata approach. Go after that generic metadata approach and add it to every resource that we have, because eventually they may never get used.
Yeah.
So it's a good call out on that. So you were suggesting rewriting the spec in and adding that point, saying we're going to do this only if there are use cases or something.
Yeah, I mean, we can keep that as a list of applicable resources. And there's some outdated information between the spec and what was actually implemented with the abstraction, so that could use a refresh. I think that for now, unless there is some demand or a corner case or a specific use case to implement for one of the other resources, I think with export locations and access rules, we have a pretty useful pool of resources that now have metadata, and we can probably keep it at that until something changes in the future.
Agreed.
Great. So next up, we have the OpenStack client feature, which feature parity is complete, but the functional tests, we have not reached full coverage. We did a hackathon for that some time ago, and I think we merged every patch that was part of that hackathon, which is astounding, really. I think what's left on that Kanban board is probably some negative testing coverage.
Yeah, as far as I remember, yes.
Yeah, and then there are also some nice to have commands that are missing, specifically the OpenStack availability zone list and the quota show list set commands, which are not Manila, it's just OpenStack commands. Right, so we have to support Manila within those. I don't know how up to date this Kanban board is. So maybe we should
Yeah.
take some time and refresh that so we have an up-to-date view on what's in progress and what's done.
Yes. I don't think it's very up to date, honestly. I mean, I can already see some tasks here that already merged. For example, like version auto negotiation, it's done, so it's, I mean, not in progress anymore. I mean, if you look exactly through the list, then yes, there's gonna be even more.
Okay, so let's say for this cycle, definitely close out the in progress batches that already exist and update that Kanban board. Is there something else that we want to target for this cycle?
We can try to weigh on teams, or I mean, yeah, themes for hackathon. I mean, we can try to wait on that, and then if the community or the team thinks it is a good opportunity to get like a couple of days to work on the functional test that we haven't implemented while we implemented the other functional tests in the other hackathon, then I think it would be a good opportunity. So yeah, if everyone agrees and we don't think, oh, there's this other thing that's a major priority for us, then I think we should go ahead and organize a hackathon and do some negative functional testing, because it's also important for us.
Agreed.
And it's been a couple of cycles, right, since we've done the other hackathon related to the positive functional test, so why not?
Yeah, I think in regards to the OpenStack client, we're pretty close to just completing that spec.
And on the code part that is left, which is the I mean, at the very bottom of that list, you have a couple of things. I think I think we crossed out the limit stuff, right? These are wish list items, by the way. The code changes. One was availability zones. The other was let me check, quotas, right? And the reason we left them there is these are concepts that could apply across OpenStack services. But today, if you want to list Manila availability zones, you would have to do OpenStack share availability zone list. Or if you want to set quotas, you do OpenStack share quotas, so show set and list and all that stuff. But there are if you were using Nova or Cinder or Neutron or any not Neutron exactly, Nova or Cinder, and I suppose Glance or something like that, you could use the standard OpenStack availability zone list and OpenStack quota set kind of commands, and the client will do the right things. So we've been wanting to go and add stuff there, but the problem there was that the OSC and the OpenStack SDK folks didn't want to load the plugin because of the circular dependency, because we end up loading some of the OpenStack code. The OpenStack code ends up loading some of the plugin code that's inside the this thing. So it's just too much back and forth when we could be relying on the SDK that the OpenStack CLI already uses, and it uses the OpenStack SDK. And we added availability zones over there, but we've not yet added support for quotas in the SDK. And that, I think, is the blocker for implementing, a common command thingy. it's not a big amount of work. It's just that we've not gotten around to doing it, and I'm not sure a whole lot of people complain, right? It's just I don't know. It's annoying to me that there is no consistency for this, for a tool that has so much consistency. But it's not that you cannot get your work done with what's available.
Yeah. And with that also leads us into the last tech debt here regarding the OpenStack SDK. So it's primarily been something that gets worked on cycle over cycle through internships. And so we have a couple patches that are open and in need of rebase or review. That Kanban board I did update pretty recently. So yeah, 1 second. Yeah, there's 4 that are ready for review. I mean, I wouldn't say they're ready for review. A lot of these really do need to be rebased. They're out of date. But I did update that pretty recently, so that's up to date. And I think, I mean, we can leave this up to another internship cycle to complete at least the new cards, and just steadily over the cycle chip away at the ones that already exist. Up to us really to decide how we want to tackle that. But this one is also kind of close to completion. It's just a matter of getting those things merged.
Yeah, awesome. I do think it's a matter of time, yes. Because I mean, this is kind of like a good opportunity for interns to work on this, and we've had some successful internships in the past few, I think, few releases or even more. Yes, so it was nice to see the progress we made on this. There's of course like still some work to do, but it is kind of the same feeling as the CLI, like we were getting things done one by one, and then it took some cycles, but at the end, I mean, managed to complete everything. And I feel for SDK, it's gonna be the same thing, and it's being the same thing. So it's just a matter of a couple of cycles, and it's trying to push on the mentoring for some internships. And yes, I think this will get done soon.
And I think the future of this is also use case driven. If some feature is missing, that would be the priority. And so far, we've not had all that kind of feedback, because most of the stuff that's merged it's been the last couple of cycles. And I do see patches outside of this team as well. So seems like folks have started using the SDK methods, and they're like filling in the code and finding bugs and things like that. But if something is not supported, right? Like for example, the Nova team told us that the access rules stuff had to be supported, so that they could use that for the Verta UFS work. And Carlos is adding support for the resource locks thing right there, so that Nova could take advantage of that, and so on. So that would be the way to go about this, because there is still a ton of work to be done, as you have on the Tiger board. And we should probably use this opportunity with onboarding new interns and new contributors and stuff like that. It's been a very good project to do with them, like you said. Any concerns with that besides the three of us that seem to be in agreement about that? Is anyone does anyone have an opinion on the SDK, OpenStack SDK? I would think not. I mean, this is the sort of thing that you just expect to work. So I wouldn't blame you.
I should get one of those sound buttons that plays the cricket sound.
Right.
Yep. And
Awesome.
then the last one in the tech debt roundup, I admittedly don't know too much about share transfers.
Yeah, and I can fill in there. So we did share transfers a while ago with, I think that's the yoga cycle when it was proposed. I think we ended up merging it in the Z cycle. So it's been a while though, and the reason that you know we had to split up some work for it, um, and we realized soon that it wasn't as easy to do transfers of resources with Manila stuff as it was with Nova and Cinder, partially because we have this concept of the hard multi-tenancy, right? The DHSS true aspect. So when you have a share network that's associated with multiple shares, our typical this thing over there is that a tenant will actually own the share network, and the share network is not shared outside of the tenant. So it makes sense to allow transfers at the network level rather than at individual shares. Because if you did allow an individual share to be transferred, imagine a share network that has 3 or 4 shares, and one of them is transferred to another tenant. That's going to break all sorts of things, because the new tenant that has access, that now owns that share is associated with a network that's not in their namespace. So it just won't work in terms of any other kind of operations that you do on top of that share from there on forward. So we had to rethink that a little bit. And so when Hexene was working on this, we kind of asked him to not worry about DHSS true in the first iteration and do the DHSS false, a simpler use case where the multi-tenancy is not associated with anything higher than a share. So you could potentially work on the DHSS true thing for the networks as a follow-on once we have hashed out the API and the database for it and stuff. And he's done a great job with the way he structured the data structures in the database, and with the way the message bus is built and all that stuff, that it makes sense now for us to work on the extension and complete the DHSS true stuff. At this point, though, I'm not sure who is interested to work on that, though, because I'm not even sure if Hyaxine's inspiration for this comes from a use case that was there from this thing from a real cloud user. I would think this sort of thing is very useful for public clouds, service provider clouds, and so on, where there are multiple tenants, and occasionally the transferring of things across tenants happens, or even where somebody is decommissioning an entire tenant and rolling over all of the OpenStack resources to a different tenant and so on. They could do all of this if as a hack by just getting into the database and reconciling all the things that we would do with respect to tenancy. But providing an API like this has always been the ask, right? So we've punted that work that needs to be completed. And the second part of that same work which needs to be completed is when we did share transfer, we deliberately ignored shares that can have multiple instances. And the biggest thing for that is replication, because you can't transfer a share that is going through a migration, right? So that's the migration and replication are the two only places where you have a possibility that a share can exist in multiple places, right? It can exist in multiple places during a migration because there's a source and a destination, and with replication, it can exist in multiple places just because you have an active replica and n number of inactive or secondary copies of that share. And so that's another thing we had to excise out of that thing. And today, if you try to do a share transfer, you can't do it if the share has replicas. so that's just something we again stopped at when implementing the initial support, is because we wanted to again use the initial thing to hash out the API and stuff and not worry about how complex this is getting with when you have a multi-replica share, for instance. The complexity there is associated with the fact that the transfer is not just an API change and not just a database change. The transfer is being acknowledged by the shared driver. So it's possible that some shared drivers have encoded project information when they're creating their shares, their access rules, and so on. So if you're looking at a thing with replication, it's possible that this information is encoded in all the places that the share exists in, the primary copy, the secondary copies, and so on. So we had to rethink how that works for replication. And so that's another thing that was not completed. If somebody is interested to work on this, this is a really nice, cool new feature that touches all parts of the stack, sort of thing. And it's worth investing our time into. And we typically frown upon features that are not completed, right? Like the point is, you don't ever want to have a matrix where, oh, it works for some things and doesn't work for 10 other things, kind of thing. So that's why this falls into our top of the tech debt list. So we need to wrap it up around this. We can go back and ask Hyaxine if there was any plan to follow up on this. But one of the things I would also caution against is when working with DHS is true, you really want to work with you should have a backend that you have in mind, whether that is the generic driver, the container driver, or one of the vendor drivers, because you'd want something to be able to test with. So that might be the challenge in finishing up this work, and even if Hyaxine picks it up. So that's the short spiel on what that is. Any thoughts, concerns? Anybody wants this feature and would like us to prioritize this? Crickets again, but that's okay, because one of the things we do want to do with this is capture this as a gap, so we can get that wider feedback from folks that are maybe not here as well in this call. So that's pretty much it. But if you want to chat about this, feel free to talk to me or anyone that has worked on this feature or reviewed this feature, kind of thing, or even bring it up in a weekly meeting. We can pick this up and go on from there. As of now, folks on this call probably don't have this as a priority, right? That's the danger of this. We can punt it for sure at the end of this release and then think about this again. And find some way to get it completed.
Awesome. Yeah. Indeed, a cool challenge to work on, honestly. So as Gautam said, if you're interested in picking it up, please let us know. Yeah, it's gonna be a good thing. And yeah, nice challenge, and especially like the GSS true part, you'll be able to work with a lot of stuff in the Manila code. So yeah. Just trying to echo what Gautam already said. Okay, so do you guys have any questions or would like to add something else to this? All right, taking silence as no. We are ahead in the schedule. Yeah, I think so. We have a 10-minute break scheduled. Would you like to take that break now, or would you like to continue it already? continue the discussions.
I was gonna suggest the next topic is pretty light, so we could wrap up early if you'd like. Maybe just take a 5-minute break, but come back, wrap that up, and step right into a happy hour. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. That's a good idea.
Yep. Yeah, as we get later into the day, I'm sure folks are dropping off for it's the end of their day.
Yeah.
We certainly lost all our participants from India, because it's a god awful time there, and it's not worth you know, uh, and it's a Friday evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's cover the next one and then we can.
Oh, okay. And then do the break and then get back to happy hour. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. So the next one, just informational again. The topic's pretty simple. We finished up the resource logs that were required at the moment for getting unblocking Nova and getting the VertiOFS work started. So Nova has a bulk of things to complete in this cycle, and they will be tying to the couple of things that we have implemented. So we've implemented locks to delete a share. So Nova, what it would do is it would, when it mounts a share, it would set a lock on that share so that no users or automation can delete the share while it is mounted on Nova. The other thing that we added was support for doing the same thing with access rules. So when Nova is creating an access rule, it would do the same thing. It would actually lock it as it was creating it, so that when as long as it has it mounted, nobody can actually even delete the access rule, right? Because that's an operation like that will be disruptive to Nova mounting that share. And the third thing that was covered with the resource locks was the visibility of access rules sensitive information. So for example, Nova could be using a CEFX user or an IP address or a Kerberos user or a CIF user. And there is some information that's encoded in the access rules, such as who has access. And in case of CEFX, it's also what is their access secret? What is the secret that they use to go ahead and mount this stuff? And it'd be very awkward for an end user to see the internal details that Nova is putting in to gain access to the share that's actually being hypervisor mediated and connected to their VM directly. So they needed a way to lock the visibility of that, and that was also completed with the help of these resource locks. As we discussed last time, resource locks have actually been pretty generically implemented in the sense that we can add any number of locks as the use cases come up. And the biggest use case I think for people would be, hey, I want to prevent deletion of something, or I want to prevent accidental deletion of something most of the times. And that's just been the kind of thing which also made us invent the whole recycle bin concept, the soft delete thing for shares and so on. So some things that you may want to prevent deletion of, like snapshots, backups, and replicas, and some other things that we want to prevent. Maybe you want to prevent reverting a snapshot to a share and so on. So but we don't also want to go willy-nilly add support to every single action, because it's not really a generic thing when you think about it, because the way these API methods are written, you'll have to go modify each of those API methods. Just give me 1 second. I think I'm just trying to also multitask this thing into inviting folks that are trying to get trying to be outreach interns, one of who is already joined here, and I will introduce them in a bit, but there is one more person that's trying to join. Okay, cool. Yes, so that's the idea. So technically, don't want to add them all over the code. And so I want to try to rationalize what the use cases are. So if folks are aware of what can be done next, feel free to ping me or to just create a blueprint or to just bring it up in a weekly meeting, right? And to add a resource lock, add support for a resource lock is very, 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 very simple at this point with the help of the methods that we've written, which are pretty generic. So that was the intent, to kind of provide a framework like the way we've done with share transfers, the way we've done with user messages, this is the same way we wanted to do the locks as well. So please take a look, I guess, and if you think of other use cases, let us know, and we'll be happy to help you land that stuff. And for the upcoming cycle, I don't know if we just wanted to keep going with this, if we want to go ahead with the deletion locks on these resources. I was just throwing it up as an idea. I wasn't like chasing the feature myself. But what any thoughts on that?
Only that I think it's the way it is implemented, man, it's so easy to go ahead and implement the other ones. And you can get like a whole lot done with that. So yeah, I would definitely encourage the, if you have a use case for that, or if you can think of something to implement that. For example, we were talking these days about like the whole security services stuff, where we are basically displaying some of the sensitive fields, and that could be one answer to it. So like resource lock, we could lock the visibility of the username and the password using resource locks. I mean, it's mostly implemented already. So what we will need to do is go ahead and to add the implementation. But yeah, I think it's a pretty useful thing. One of the issues with the security service fields as well was like we were storing that in plain text in the database at some point. So I think initially that was the main issue. But now, I mean, if it's just a matter of hiding whatever we are doing there, yeah, resource locks would be a good way to go, because we already have that example for access rules, and we could easily implement that for the security services as well.
Yeah, I agree. Agree. That's a pretty cool use case for sure. Besides, I think we've dotted all the I's, crossed the T's with respect to the feature itself, right? Like it's well documented at this point. It's been well tested as well. We've probably merged all of the changes in Tempest as well.
I think the main mechanism for resource locks, yes, we measured in Tempest, but the visibility and deletion of access rules, I think it's still up, if I recall correctly. So
I
that's
see.
the only change left we have to merge. SDK integration is up to review as well. I have received some reviews there, but I think there is need for like some other people from the SDK also to look at the change and provide feedback. I know Stephen did that, but yeah, it's just a matter of like working through more reviews with some reviewers, and I think that it's just a matter of time to getting it done.
Yes, definitely. I'm just dropping the links there for folks. I think this needs a little attention at the moment. The Tempest tests are failing for some reason, and the SDK patch is in merge conflict.
Okay, update both. The
Yep.
Tempest tests, I don't remember exactly why it was failing. But yeah, I remember I looked at it at some point. Anyways, I'll circle back to them.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, that's a wrap. That's pretty much it. I wanted to chat.
Awesome. So I think it pretty much covers all topics we wanted to cover for this week, for this PTG. There are a couple of items in the parking lot. Do you feel we should go over those?
I don't think I'm prepared. The what is that? The biggest thing would be I was planning on writing the talk. So first, let me think through my thoughts and write the talk, and then it'll be easy to present this sort of thing. We can defer it to a weekly meeting, and the SR back changes we both brainstormed and we kind of touched upon it elsewhere in the PTG, like in the Cinder room yesterday. So I think we should put that together into an Etherpad as well, because there's too many moving parts and it's not something that can you know make sense if you're not following the stuff. So it would be, best if we put that in Etherpad so everyone can be on the same page.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. I think we do. I mean, it's the end of my topic, but I did want to take an opportunity to welcome a couple of folks on this call. Um, I will butcher your name, so please, correct me if I'm saying this wrong. Is it Melaku or Milaku? How would you say it?
Uh, the first one is correct, I guess. Malaco.
Melaku. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And there's Gray. Gray, is that your first name or is that a nick?
That is, yeah, that's my first name. I'm Gray Lutalo. I'm from
Okay.
Kenya, and thank you so much for the opportunity and the link.
Yeah. No, thank you so much to the both of you for joining. You've actually been pushing up patches for the outreach internships contribution period. So thanks for participating. And if you had questions, this is a good time to ask them, because you have other folks in the community over here.
I personally had a question, but I don't know what is on the agenda, so I wouldn't wish to mess up your agenda. So.
No, we're at the end of it. So we're wrapping up this meeting. So it's the end of the week for us in terms of meetings and stuff like that. But your question was about the installation of what is that? The DevStack and the Manila UI plugin, right?
Yeah, what is happening is I've been trying of recent to understand how the different parts of the Manila, how the different components of the Manila are working, and basing on the documentations that I've actually been able to access. This code exists in different repositories, which I
Right.
think interact somehow, somewhere. So I've been of recent trying to set up the developer environment so that I be able to familiarize with what happens at the UI versus what happens with the backend, or if I call it like that.
Yeah.
So right now, what I would really wish to understand is how should I install the whole thing so that I can just simply know which part to fix, or which part of the code uh, I need to tackle in in case I have something I'm working on. I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense
Yeah.
though.
No, it does. It does. And I think, I mean, you've been asking me that as well as Malaku. So I think it's a good this thing to whatever. And folks here can correct me. So for a test environment, when you want to stand up all of these software, right? So Manila is split into the at least 3 repositories that you guys would probably might find some bugs to fix it, right? So it's as you said, it's a server and then a couple of clients. The clients, there is a CLI and then SDK that's baked into one that's called the Python Manila client, and the other is the UI. That's the one that the Outreachy project is based on. But in the bug trackers, you can pick anywhere. The bug trackers are broken into these projects as well. But to set them up and to actually see them interacting, you will need a development environment like DevStack. That will be the biggest and the easiest way that we would recommend, for instance. But to do DevStack, you will need a virtual machine. You cannot run it on your laptop directly on your computer or anything of that sort. That's just plainly it. There are 1,000 ways to deploy OpenStack, and it's usually a joke because it is a complex ecosystem, and you can do it in many ways. Like there are much more easier containerized ways as well. But DevStack has been consistently working as the way to onboard and to kind of to add your initial contribution. So I would not stray away from that. That is why I would recommend DevStack. To install DevStack, there's a document that we've written. That will be a good place to start. And I'm just throwing it in the chat over here, but I might have also given it to you in the Outreachy doc as well as the elsewhere. So click through that and read through that. That would be how you would start off. Except we've not spoken a whole lot about how do you create a virtual machine and all of that stuff. And one of the places I like to link that out of is one of our past interns has written a blog post on using virtual machines to set up DevStack, and that might be a better guide to you than anything we can give you. So here's the blog of this intern. She's a past intern and a rock star at that. So take a look at those 3 or 4 posts that she's written. She's actually gone through the steps of how to create virtual machines and how to bootstrap DevStack in them and so on. Pay some attention to if you're using the UI. The UI is so optional that by default we would have turned it off. And pay attention to the doc to places where it actually says enable the UI with this line and stuff like that. So if you don't do that, you'd have to tear it down and rebuild it, kind of a thing, or have to do something a little crazier to get the UI working. So besides that, I guess those would be the best places to look. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. It really does. Actually, I had tried I had tried setting it up without the virtual machine, and I read through the logs again, and it was like it will mess up your network. So I got
It
afraid
definitely
and
does.
cleared everything. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't
So
want you to break your laptop because you're yeah, no.
yeah, sure.
Don't attempt it on your local machine.
Cool. So another question I had is, actually, honestly, the truth is we are against time, and
Yeah.
some of us have just realized that let's kick in and try to configure some stuff and learn some more information. So would it be possible if maybe Monday morning, if maybe when we be able to come up with some simple application, maybe would it be able with you people be in office such that you can at least look through and maybe comment a little bit when you have some time, so that before outreach closes that out, at least maybe you have had a glimpse of an eye.
Uh, for sure. I can already see folks that have started applications, and I think, I mean, I can see some parts of it. I would say, I mean, yeah, I for one, I'm constantly looking at these applications. So, you know, if you'd want me to provide any feedback on what's already there, I don't mind doing that. But I also don't look at them as a you know, complete review and a formal thing until the thing is done, right? It's past the 31st of October that that we're asked to look at them seriously. So for now, what I would suggest is put in as much information about yourself and about these contributions that you're making and everything that you're understanding. And that would be the biggest thing. And I think I've called this out. This project is complex to get into, but you will realize after a while that it actually makes it actually is, you know, fairly easy once you start getting onboarded. So that initial trough that folks go through is totally understandable. So no question it's going to be stupid. No question is dumb. At least for this crowd, we're used to it because there's a hell of a lot of things that you folks probably have experience with, but not this, right? So so I guarantee you that it gets better, but that initial struggle will be there. So if you have any troubles, do ping weekends, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, we run IRC bouncers so we can see your messages, but it might just be a little late. Um, and both of you at least have set up matrix and all that stuff, so you can see backlogs when you come back to computers yourself. So that's good. So we're on the right path here.
Cool. That answers all my questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks
So,
for the link.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead,
can I
Madam.
ask you one question?
Mhm.
Okay, so I have tried to solve some issues on the Launchpad. So what I would like to ask is like if there is any documentation or any beginner-friendly documentation to understand the repository, the Manila repository, and yeah, to understand everything like how the API, the folders are structured. So yeah.
So that's one of the things we spoke about earlier today in our meeting ourselves. And we realized that the docs are lacking over there. So I don't have great news for you in terms of that. The contributor doc, if you were to like, you know, step through it little by little, you might get a fair understanding, but you might also get confused, right? Because there's not a very 10,000-foot view. One place that we can recommend doing stuff to reading what it does, what is Manila all about, would be YouTube. And on YouTube we have videos of from past OpenStack summits. These are conferences where we go and present you know, new features and things like that. So I can pass you a couple of links of like the basic intro things. But code organization wise, I think, I don't know, Carlos, do we have anything where we're going through how the code is organized, maybe with past interns in our YouTube channel?
I think so, yes. I need to double check that, but I think we do, especially with
Okay.
the previous round.
Perfect. And I'm just going to drop this on the chat, the link to something Carlos is also looking at, right? And that is the channel. This is the OpenStack Manila channel. That's a weird URL. There is a better URL to that. I think it just is YouTube at OpenStack Manila.
The only issue I think is that the other project is not, the other videos are not public.
Oh, I see.
I will need to work on that likely, or I can, I'm not sure. Let's see what I can do with YouTube. Or I could just make all of those videos public, right?
Yeah. If it's not a problem, we could. Not a problem as in, I don't think we've spoken anything privileged.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So yeah, I made a playlist. It's May to August. All right, so I will share a playlist that I'll make available now. Right, so I'm sharing it on the chat.
Perfect.
So can you see videos there? If not, I will take a look at it, but I don't actually know what videos we talked about that. So that's good. That's the thing that's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
I think there's a way for me. Oh yeah, sorry. I don't think there's a recording for the week I was hoping.
Yeah.
Okay, I can check that later and I'll let you know. Because I mean, it will take me some time to look through the videos and everything and try to understand everything and see what are the videos that have this information.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Carlos.
No worries.
All right. If you'd like, we could switch over to this thing. Is that it, Melaku and Gray? Any other questions?
I think I've finished.
Okay.
That's all from me. Thank you so much. Have a blessed weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, the both of you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye, thanks. Right, so I think it's a wrap for topics. So next we have happy hour. So if you'd like to stay, you can chat with us about likely not work-related stuff. But thank you everyone for joining this PTG. It was really great to see all of the discussions, the amount of participation we had, and also it's a good thing to discuss the things we'll be doing for the next release. So yeah, really happy with the outcomes, but also really happy to have this opportunity to work with all of you during this week. So thanks a lot for that. It was really great. So yeah, that's all for the recordings. If you'd like to check out on what happened during the previous days of the PTG, please check the recordings of the other 3 days. So thank you very much.